We're a full house. Good to see you. Any declarations of interest on items included in tonight's agenda? None?
No.
Okay, thank you. Number 3, minutes of previous meetings. The Town Council meeting 14th of January 2019 for approval. They have been distributed. Could I have a vote, please? Councillor Geddes, seconder. Councillor Lucas, all those in favour, please show. Carried, thank you very much. And the Planning Committee meeting of 29th of January 2019 for information only. Which leads us directly into the financial report. Clark, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The usual structure for this report starts with the balances at the end of January. The reporting date for this meeting, and bank accounts total £198,026. I can report that the reconciliation of those accounts to the bank has been completed. Payments during January came to a total of 32,127, of which 4,030 is down to Salisbury Gardens activities. As usual, the full list of payments made during the month is attached to this report. Receipts during January came to a total of 8,880, with 5,343 of that from Salisbury Gardens rents. I've made a note just so that you're aware that we're meeting our obligations with HMRC. The receipts included £1,436 being the VAT reclaim for the October to December 2018 period. And finally, Mr. Mayor, the list of payments and receipts against budget lines for the 10 months of the financial year we've had so far is again attached to this report, showing that expenditure in the period was 10,542, less than the budgeted amounts, and receipts over the period were a substantial £101 higher than budget.
That's very, very good news there. Thank you very much. I'd like to see those two bottom line figures. Thank you very much indeed. We'll work on that. Do any members have anything to ask with regard to the finance report? No, in that case, can I have a proposal? Is it accept? Councillor Markham, seconder, please. Councillor Mack, all those in favour, please show. Thank you, unanimous. I should have slipped in before the financial report. We have received belatedly a police report, which is here. You can see why it's belated. It's hardly got to put pen to paper. But anyway, at least Chris Larry has made the effort to give us something. But I don't think it's contentious. I don't think there's anything to say on it. So we'll take it as read, I think. Thank you. Right, family voice. You want to go, Jason?
Either me or Councillor Mack, this is on the agenda if you remember, because it was discussed at the initially it comes from the Community Development Working Group, and it was discussed at the informal budget meeting and is currently included in the draft budget that you've got as the next item on the agenda, but it was sensibly suggested that it should be formally approved by the Town Council meeting if it was to proceed within that budget. For the record, this is a project that was originally developed during the Town Council's participation in the Our Place project 3 years ago, and it was born from the recognition that all the consultation we did at that time, which was extensive, tended to not to include the particular and very important section of the town's residents and families with young children living in poverty. And given the focus of the Town Council's strategy in respect of deprivation, it was felt that a project should be developed to enable that voice to be surfaced and heard. And in the event that project didn't take place, for reasons I've explained in my brief report, mainly because it was going to be based on the Children's Centre, and that was overtaken by a major reorganisation, and it was simply impossible to do. And since then it's sat on the shelf waiting to be re-energised, and that's why it's before you now. Councillor Mack may well add to that.
Jason?
No, it was within section 2 of the paper. So I've had an initial conversation with St Francis Primary School. Of course, it's going to have to go to their governing body, and I'm quite willing to go up there and explain the project to them and see if they are willing to carry forward with the project. I think it's as David said, unfortunately the change in what was going on at the Children's Centre, we couldn't develop it through them. But I think we'll certainly look at the target market that we're within the town. Certainly they and their children do use St Francis Primary School, so I think that's a good basis to kick off with this. And indeed, it could very well. It's not a situation where it can be the venue is exclusively St Francis Primary School, but just to get that recognition with children and parents. That's what we stand forward for. Quite happy to discuss it.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. Yeah, I think I'm talking to Nikki and Tony McCarthy about it. They're really quite keen, and I'm really pleased that the focus is moving away, although it's very much centred in deprivation and poverty, because that's the fact of the places that we're talking about and the children we're talking about are there. But the focus is such because people do have a suspicion of things like that and wouldn't necessarily come forward and admit to coming from that area of society in any case, something like that. So, yeah. I'm fully in favour of myself. Do any members have anything to add?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm pleased that we've got this report, and obviously there's no arguing that the issue underneath the project is a worthwhile one, but I'm not happy with what we've got here, really. It's very vague. The purpose of the project isn't really clear. The deliverables aren't defined, and the actual content is still to be decided looking at the report. So it looks like we're doing something just because we ought to do something rather than because there's actually any purpose to this. That was my feeling when I read it.
Well, I think an answer to that, Councillor Bond, is the fact that if we agree the initial £3,000 funding together with Tony and Nicky, Jason and McClark, that's exactly what's going to happen. The details going to come later. And can you bear in mind that we were originally granted £40,000 under the old scheme in any case? It would seem to me to be value for money, but that's a matter for members to elaborate for themselves. But that's certainly my opinion. Jason?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's no doubt. I do understand where Councillor Bond's coming from, and it's not a situation where we're going to change very much in the JSNA or the deprivation figures. In fact, as we've known from certainly for the time I've been on this council, when we first found out that first JSNA, which is directly where this council started to look at around deprivation and regeneration. Those figures have got worse. Aspiration for educational aspiration for children, and certainly through employment has continued to fall. Certainly in Loudville we have a lot of our children there that are not looked after by social services, but certainly there's a huge proportion that have communication with the social services department, shall we say. And I think we've always thought that those type of people, as Chair has said, don't always come forward. Certainly, I'm not here this evening. I'm probably not viewing at this point, and probably I certainly see with the work we do with the network program, the jobs and benefits information sessions we do at the library on Thursday morning, we're increasingly finding other problems that people have within the whole social welfare system. So, as again has been quite highlighted today, the take-up of food bank situation, the problems with people that they're having with universal credit at this point. I think it fits in within that, as I say, so that can expand within, and we do understand that the problems that are certain people in our electorate have with accessing those benefits a lot of the time. That's often what we have to do. We become very much a signposting situation. And I think the other added value to this project is that we have it then analysed independently outside. We can certainly, I think, in the initial period we were talking about this, we were looking at university to take forward that piece of work and see where things were missing. Is that, again, it's coming down to, is it a coastal town situation, is it an island situation? We can probably answer all those, but having that empirical evidence that suggests living at the edge of the island, and certainly, as we know, with transport costs that people can incur to other areas, accessing information a lot of the time. I certainly know we've had a couple of situations where we've had to give people bus fare to get to Newport to sort out their problems, because there is nowhere else to turn. So I think in itself, what comes out of that, if we have a community that is looking after itself, which I think is always what we should be doing, this is a good strand to getting that way. And I think it's, again, something that builds that bridge between the town council and the town, so they can voice their opinions. And I definitely hear, and maybe some of you do, that we can sit here in an ivory tower really, and we don't really understand what's going on. So this opportunity is something for people to come forward and tell us.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, Jason's described the problems, many problems that people living in Ventnor have, most of which we're aware of. I'm just not happy. We're spending £3,000 talking to some people about problems. We don't actually know what we want to ask them. We don't know what we're going to do with it when we've got it, and we don't know why we're doing it. So,
well, I fail to see the logic in that. I think we do know why we're doing it. We're doing it as a follow-up to the Our Place programme, which is about 4 or 5 years.
3 years ago.
Sorry, 3 years ago, which never came through, and it was identified at that time. Although I understand you weren't on the council then, but it was identified at that time that there was a serious problem with deprivation of property in some of the wards in Ventnor, particularly in Ventnor East and in the Lowtherville wards. And my reading of it is, unless we do something and we do have to commit some funds to it, then we're not going to get anywhere. In any case, we need to have people talking to these families in young groups, and we need to be encouraging them to come forward, telling them what the problems are, and asking them where they think the solutions lie, and then facilitating them as the process goes forward. So I think if we just sit here and say, okay, well, we're not going to give them, or we're not going to grant any money towards it, we're not going to give any incentive to end to do something. We're talking about funding people who are more aware and more professional about what they're looking for than we are, and we really need to find their views.
Yeah, I mean, I've read the Our Place report. It's a very good piece of work, actually, and does set out a lot of the issues and challenges facing the town. My concern is this essentially is a research project, and we don't know what the question is. I'm not happy. I'm just voting £3,000 to go and talk to people without really knowing what we ought to ask them.
Well, what would you say the question should be?
I don't know. Surely £3,000 in the context of the council is not an insignificant amount of money. Surely we ought to
absolutely.
what we're going to ask and why we're doing it.
Yeah.
I think, if I may just add in response to Councillor Bond's question, I think the questions that we're interested in exploring are what is life like for you, and what would you like us to do that could assist with improving the life that you have. And it's really important for those of us who've worked with deprivation over many years that we hear the people speak for themselves. The world is full of experts who think they know, but it often isn't like that, or it's not the whole story. And even if it's close, the fact that people are able to speak for themselves is an important element of engagement. At present, as far as I'm aware, this town council has no engagement with those communities and groups which are at the centre of its strategy. You've seen the piece in the report. We're not making up the deprivation assertions. The Upper Ventnor falls in the most deprived 10% of areas nationally for children living in poverty. And I think the feeling of those of us who were involved in developing the project was that we want to hear from them, and we want to know that we, the council, are listening to them. Thank you.
Thank you. Julian.
But at this very moment, Inside Out is doing a whole half-hour programme on this very subject, as you know, and so is Panorama later on.
That's right.
Which is good we can all look at it. But I know there are over 700 children in care, not on the island because we haven't got enough parents. Actually, that's appalling, absolutely appalling, and all sorts of other ghastly figures. But you're right, it's about what we do here on the ground, isn't it? We can't have a clinic. That'd be incredibly, insufferably awful thing to do. But we have to find a way, an acceptable way of helping these people out. Because I know they are, you know they are.
But members are talking about the need and they're not talking about the project. That's the problem I have. The project is ill-defined and hasn't been scoped properly.
Well, perhaps we should take some advice. Portsmouth University's got a very good programme running. Maybe we could get someone from there to talk to us about it.
One of the things to bear in mind here, sorry, I'll bring you in a second, Dave, is the fact that the clerk alluded to the fact that some of these wards were in the lowest 10%. Actually, not just in the UK, but in the European Union. That's why we're still members of the European Union. We're in the lowest decile. So it doesn't make very good, and these people don't engage with town councils in the normal way. They don't vote, and I know for a fact that having canvassed in the areas that we're talking about, people will say they'll come to vote. They do want to engage with you on the doorstep about some things, but it's only so far and no further. And so I feel that it needs somebody with a better, although I have an insight into it. I mean, I came from poverty, but at the same time, there are people who know how to talk to these people, who know how to get them to express themselves that we couldn't possibly do it in the same way that they do, and I think that's one of the major factors too.
I mean, in terms of the engagement, I think that's an exceptionally good idea, even to do it in the sort of broadest terms, engagement. Where I'm seeing the problem here is that I'm not seeing what next. We're going to engage people, we're going to actually, well, not make them promises, but give them a contact and say, okay, your council's volunteer. But there doesn't seem to be anything here or anything to say like, okay, once we've got an engagement and we've consulted with people, and I think we could probably make a reasonably educated guess as to the kind of issues that we're going to be dealing with coming out of this. What kind of budgets and kind of stuff are we looking at to actually put the stuff into place that's going to come from this? Because I mean, the solutions to me will be there, but they won't necessarily be £2,000 solutions. So I mean, if we're going to do this, we need to do it the whole way.
Also, you've got a young family that if we just said they don't vote, so they won't walk down the street and place an X in the box, and we're going to ask them to fill in a 6-page questionnaire. How realistic is that?
Well, we don't know if it's realistic without asking the question in the first place. What we've got to decide here is whether we're prepared to take that first step, and then see where it takes us. It might be that we find or we decide at that particular stage that, okay, we've tried this to do it this way and it's not working, and if there's not another way to do it, what we're doing here is we're taking over a problem which is not really ours. It's a county council and national problem. But I think we have a social conscience, and that we should be helping people as best we can along the way. I think, although £3,000 is a lot out of the budget that we've got, we have a record of managing our money well over the past few years, and I think that if we're going to put that amount of professionalism into it, then it will take funding. And as Councillor Logan quite rightly says, then we have to open our brains up to what we're going to do once the answers start to come in, and where the funding is going to come from for them. I mean, it could be there are other funding streams available that we don't know about yet, or it could be that we can do things without the kind of funding that we're talking about. But we don't know as we sit around this table, is what I'm saying. You.
Yes, as I mentioned at the community development meeting when we discussed this, we don't want to collect data for us. That's obviously not the point, but as has been well said, there has to be a first step, and that's why I will support this.
Thank you. Councillor Lucas.
£3,000 is an ideal pump priming sum for, I'm sure we can have a robust investigation in terms of what's needed, but I feel that we will uncover needs which will be enormous, to the point where 3,000 wouldn't even touch the sides, and so we will then lead ourselves onto a position of needing to find serious funding. We mustn't kid ourselves that 3,000 is going to have a real effect on the issues which we suspect are there. So we lead ourselves to a bigger problem, I think, rather than just putting the 3,000 down. We're opening a door which I think will require serious funding.
So are you suggesting we park the problem?
No, but I'm saying is we should be aware that £3,000 isn't going to touch the problem. It's only going to identify the problem.
Yeah, I think that's what part of what the exercise is about, is identifying and seeing where we go from there. We're not going to commit the council to become a social services.
No, we're not committing ourselves, but I want us to be aware that we are opening an activity there which will be enormous.
Yeah.
Because we're very skilled at, I think, identifying and consulting with people. But we will open, we don't have a child centre in the town anymore, do we?
No.
I mean, that's a massive gap, which has to be filled straight away, I think, in terms of a connection point with these families. Yeah, so I'm all for the 3,000, but I'm just aware that it's only a starting point.
Yeah, sure, I take that on board, but I think the contrary argument to that is I would think that we did consult over the pedestrianisation project, and we listened as we talked to the people. Jason?
No, yeah, I was just going to say with Brian coming forward there, I think you're quite right. We have, we're good at identifying these and we're good at consulting about it. Maybe what we're not so good at, or what we haven't picked up in the past, is from the evidence and the information we get back from this, then we work on our lobbying skills to the people that can help it with the bigger the bigger scope that it needs. Certainly, we have fairly good relationships with health and with certain departments with the Isle of Wight Council, but they can only be strengthened by us going forward and saying, look, we now have the evidence, this needs to somehow come, we need to work together to get that done. Sure. And I think if we look at Newport has benefited recently from what was, I think, called Happy Island. I don't know what they've called it since, looking at their town centre and what they want to do with great support from the Isle of Wight Council. I think then rather than us go, excuse me, what about us? We do once we always do, and we do well as we find that problem and we look forward to, we talk to Power about how it can be mitigated.
Thank you. Anybody else? We'll move to the vote. Okay. Right, the recommendation is that members are recommended to support the revival of the Family Voice project and agree the inclusion of a budget line of £3,000 for the financial year 2019/20. Jason, do you want to move?
I shall move.
Second, please. Councillor Geddes. All those in favour? Against? So that is passed. Thank you very much indeed. A very interesting discussion. I'm very interested in this. It goes along. Right, we're back to the park. For the budget preset. Just preface as members will know, with the exception of Colin, who wasn't officially a councillor, then we have had a informal meetings over the budget and preset, but obviously it's something which the whole council has to consider and vote upon before our decision is forwarded to the Isle of Wight Council by the clerk. Clerk.
Yes, as you said, we've had previous discussions of this, and the draft attached to this report was the outcome of that discussion. So I don't think I have anything.
No surprises since.
Really. My work was getting all those figures in the right place,
yes,
and adding up to the right totals. There was a clear agreement, as I understand it, at the informal meeting, that an increase of 3.86% was reasonable in all the circumstances, and that's what the draft budget still delivers, provided we keep to it, of course.
Right. Councillors, any comments? Well, I know you weren't involved in the discussions originally, but if you get anything to say, any thoughts on it, feel free.
Just remind me what we did with the provision for the park costs. We're anticipating it's a quarter next year, isn't it? And then the other 3 quarters the year after.
Yes.
Because it's quite a lot of money, isn't it? Where did we put that in here? I know we've increased the contingency.
The budget allows for the first quarter of 2020, which is the first time the new contract will be. That's when the Isle of Wight Council are proposing to begin their new contractual arrangement, when they at present aren't proposing to fund principal parks to the standard that they have been kept in the past. So it's just for 1 quarter. There'd be a much larger amount in the following year if the town wishes to maintain Ventnor Park to its current standards.
So we're in to the 1 quarter that we're anticipating. Which line is that?
Line 47.
47 is existing, that's existing, isn't it?
Yes, the expectation is that the gap between the Isle of Wight Council's statutory responsibilities for grass cutting and litter picking, which they will have to continue, and the cost of maintaining the park to its present standard is expected to be somewhere in the region of 30,000 plus the 7.5 for the quarter.
Yeah, but 7.5 is already in this year's budget, isn't it? Looking at this, am I missing something?
No, it's been in this year's budget and hasn't been used.
Oh, okay, that's fine. That's what that's so yeah.
So next year's is
yeah.
not
So the question of the contingency is to cover is in anticipation of a glide path to the big cost in the year after. That's fine. Thanks very much.
Perhaps if councillors speak to say anything of what the council's thoughts are on the Ventnor Park, let us know.
I will do.
Because we're very intrigued.
Don't know anything about that.
Okay, thanks, Gary. Okay. So, we've moved to the recommendation. This is straightforward. The Town Councils recommend to adopt the draft budget as presented. It's in the report. Confirm its preset related budget for 2019/20 to be £342,881. and set the preset income to fund it at £34,294, together with the grant of £2,587 from the Isle of Wight Council. Paltry, isn't it? It's absolutely disgraceful. There's nothing we can do about that.
Every little helps.
Yeah.
200,000 would do it.
And that we then authorise the town clerk to inform the Isle of Wight Council accordingly. All those in favour? Thank you very much. So Boniface Fields. Right, so what's going on? Lots of work going on up there.
Yes, there has been, and people going past the site will have noticed Jim Toogood taking the entrance to and putting it back together again with his hard hat and yellow jacket, greatly assisted by the Town Council's maintenance manager Brian Roberts, and with 3 days of labour from our administrative assistant Morgan Williams.
That's right, yeah. I hope you've not been headbutted with a hard hat, Morgan. Use a hammer.
And the result of that is that
Oh, sorry. I've got a new phone, sorry. I'm just...
Never again.
Oh, sorry.
Where's the water jug?
Honestly, I don't know. It's like the state of defence, isn't it? I'll just switch it off.
Six Nations stuff coming through, is it? Six Nations stuff coming through.
Well, the referee is still alive and walking around. Sorry about that. I don't want that in a minute.
we have it live streamed.
Oh well, the same as
You're blushing,
can do, I can do better.
We'll pay royalties on that.
Anyway, where were we?
So the result of the combined labour, it's not quite finished yet, and Jim Toogood in particular will have put something like 5 full days work into that. But the result is to save £10,000 from the original quotation for that piece of work alone. So it's a significant, very significant contribution to the development of the site. You'll note section 2 on the list that's still waiting to be developed. We're still operating on the basis of a tenancy at will. I'm told when my conversations with Isle of Wight Council officers that that's because they're still waiting for a Section 77 notice from the Department of Education to release the site from its designation as school playing fields. That's been going on for well over a year now, which is longer than I'm told the department normally takes to process this notice. So there may well have been some delay in initially requesting it, but hopefully it's proceeding now. And as you'll notice, it's significant that until that lease is in place, Ventnor Shed, who occupy the oldest of the 4 porter cabins on the site, use that space on the basis of a tenancy at will from the Isle of Wight Council. The intention is, and that this is understood by the Isle of Wight Council too, that once the lease is properly in place for the whole site, that will transfer the old porter cabin as part of that process. So Ventnor Shed will finish up as the tenant of the town council, but isn't currently so. I have reported before, I think, on the discussions with St Catherine's School, who, as you know, are planning to use the area around the AstroTurf surface as their space for activities from the school once they complete their discussions with the diocese for a lease from the old St Boniface School building. They will then have access to that area of the field, which will be fenced off. And in the course, as I've said here, of 3 meetings with one of the school trustees, Tony Flowers, to put a name to that, which would be very constructive and helpful. Agreements now been reached with the school, us, at least as far as my participation in that's involved, and the Isle of Wight Council, where precisely that area will be fenced. When that will happen is unknown. The school, I understand, are hoping to have a lease in place from the diocese from the 1st of April this year. And so at some point after that, we could expect their works to start. It does have some impact on use of the remainder of the field, but nothing that can't be coped with. So works have been going ahead as well as on the entrance, then also the major tree surgery, which had a significant effect on the light on that site, if any of you have been there, and it's been very well done by a very professional tree surgeon, and the cost, as you can see, was £1,550. But doing that work was also a condition of the planning permission, so that was necessary to be done. And the planners have told us that they are very satisfied with the work and have signed off on that condition. The purpose of the adjustment to the entrance, just so that you're clear, was to allow vehicles to enter and leave the site at the same time to prevent tailbacks into the road. People were waiting to get in or someone else was waiting to get out, and to adjust the sight lines both sides of the entrance. That also was a condition of the planning permission. So by the end of this week, that will have been fulfilled as well. That leaves us with work still to be done, and the Assets and Services Working Group have been working on this in detail for a considerable period of time, I think it seems. And what we've come down to is the feeling that at this time we should only do the works which are essential to the operation of the site, and not some of the additional works which have been identified as being desirable rather than essential. So the works which are planned to go ahead as being the essential works, as you can see, are the external lighting and the provision of water and drainage facilities to the new porta cabin. That was and together with the ramps and putting toilets in those porta cabins, as section 4B says, was originally quoted at over £31,000. So the Assets and Services Group has scaled that back to exclude for now the work of adding the additional toilets, and to use the toilets in the old porta cabin as the toilet facilities for the whole of the upper site until, if and when further funding becomes available. The essential works then remain the external lighting and the water and drainage supplies, because the usage of the two porta cabins on top of each other require both water and drainage before they can be operated properly. And as you see from section D, the detailed quotation for this work is £12,351. And the recommendation is that the Town Council approves that expenditure by using a combination of the underspend in the current year's budget of £8,778 and drawing down 3,573 from the coming year's budget, because the Assets and Services Working Group, and certainly me, would like to begin charging people for their use of the site from the 1st of April, because the budget you've just approved assumes a level of income from those usages, and we can't charge the £5,000 that's been agreed for the use of the 2 porter cabins until the water supply and drainage facilities are available. I think that's me, Jim.
Thank you, Clark. Yeah, I was going to just comment on the income stream a little bit, because basically the people who are in the cabins and also the plot lessees, let's say, are not getting the deal that they thought they were paying for, but they're not paying for it because we haven't charged them anything, because basically it's not fit for purpose. There are no toilets, no water. So it's imperative really that work gets to go ahead to be done.
And we don't own it.
And we don't own it until the lease. I know, but Councillor Peace is listening to what we're saying about the Department for Education and the Isle of Wight Council maybe facilitating the change of use from school playing field.
Can I just say I'm not surprised it's taken so long,
No.
having had numerous dealings with the Island Policeman and the delays that were caused.
Well, I'm not commenting on that, Gary, but I'm not screaming at you either. So, councillors, anything to add?
I've got a supplementary question really. At the moment there's a vehicle access onto the AstroTurf which is being used by men in sheds on occasionally, and I consider that to be very dangerous, that use of that entrance. When St Catherine's School take over the whole thing, will that be frozen off and not for our use? Because I can see that we're going to get complaints on that, because people were driving out onto a very, very dangerous bend. And we've spent money and effort sorting out the permanent entrance.
Yeah.
I wouldn't really
So
want the same problem to occur around the corner.
There won't be any parking on there. There is still an issue yet to be resolved between us and St Catherine's and the shed about disabled access to the shed.
Right.
And that, unless and until there are more substantial changes made to the boundary, that will still have to be through that gate.
Okay. Well, we need to use that very, very cautiously and carefully.
Yes.
Yeah.
They do use it very cautiously. People who are coming,
Yeah.
who need that access, are required to phone the shed beforehand,
Right.
and somebody with a yellow jacket goes out and directs
Right.
traffic.
Right.
So there is care being taken, but it's
not ideal.
especially given the parking that now takes place.
Yeah, no, about that. Thank you, Councillor Petty. That's right, we move to the recommendation then. The members are recommended to approve expenditure of Boniface Fields work identified in section 4 of the report in the sum of £12,350, with the caveats that the clerk has outlined previously. Can I have a proposer, please? Councillor Marvin. Councillor Lucas, all those in favour? Unanimous, thank you very much. Community-led housing project. Jason, do you want to?
Yes, briefly go on from the paper in front of you from Clark, report 1319. Yes, so currently, so just there's a progress report there, but we'll just add something to that came up this morning as well. So as it states there that we do have ERMC coming to give their presentations next Monday. We're not quite sure if the ground contamination work at Loudville will be finished by then, David, are we?
The work will be finished, but the laboratory analysis won't be available.
That's
I
right.
don't think it will be available.
No. But as stated in section 2 there, the work on Ventnor Central, where we're looking to relocate the library and putting the affordable housing units, have come on quite well, and I think you'll be quite impressed with the level of work that ERMC come up with that through Daniel Long and Andy Humes. Yes, I do encourage all councillors to come along next week and see that. there has come up a situation today around, and I'm sure if any of our colleagues from Sandown Town Council are listening, VAT on the Ventnor Central sites can be quite difficult because it is mixed purpose unit, so it's not just housing and it's not just a development. So we are currently looking to take advice from legal professionals on that. I think we've come up with a date for them to visit. They will visit the site, and Dave and I will show them around, and then we will have a fully legal certification of how that VAT system will work. So, and that will come in. The price for that comes in on the money that we've allocated. So the grants of £9,000 for each site, and the £1,000 that Ventnor Town Council decided to add to both of those, that will be covered within that, and so there won't be any overpayment on that situation. So any other questions I can take from there, if there's anything else that needs to be clarified.
Thank you, Jason. Does anybody have anything on this?
No, look forward to seeing the presentation.
Yeah, it will be fascinating. I'm really excited about this initiative. I think it's something that every town council, if they're not doing it already, they should be doing it, because national government's not doing it, although they're saying that social housing and council housing needs to be reinstated, but we're talking the hundreds of thousands rather than the tens or the hundreds of the thousands. So I think by doing that a little bit, we're adding to the mix.
The ERMC have done a project appraisal on Ventnor Central. They haven't yet been able to do one on the other side.
Yeah.
But the project cost on that appraisal comes in at 1.8 million.
Good. Councillors, anything? Okay, so we move forward to the recommendation, which is that members are recommended to note the contents of the report and agree the next steps identified in that. I don't think there's any dissent now. Thank you very much indeed. The number 31. This is very interesting again. I'd like to thank Stephen Crockett for the work that he's done on this, bringing this report to us. We've talked about it in the Assets Working Group also, and it's a very good piece of work, Stephen. Thank you very much indeed for the work that you put into it. And I'll open the floor to you.
Okay, well, sorry for giving you so much reading material. It's been fairly comprehensive. There's still a couple of things that need to be established from my perspective. Those of you that have gone through it might have identified that we still haven't finalised written agreements with the supplier. This still needs to be done. And the other element, to save you critiquing, well, obviously I welcome all critiques, is that I don't think the booking system is necessarily robust enough yet. So I still want to assess that. And the fragility of the booking system is kind of demonstrated at the moment. I don't know if you know, O2 is down over half the island.
Yeah.
It has been for a couple of days.
Week at least.
A week at least?
Yes.
Okay. I guess I've been lucky where I've been. I think it's been in patches, spreading backwards and forwards across the island. So that obviously points to the fact that we do really need to pin down a really good, solid, robust booking system. And I welcome any questions on it. For your information, I was out in the car today and I did drive all the extra routes in St Lawrence. And if it doesn't take that long at all, actually. I mean, theoretically, if the driver had to make the entire route every time, then it would add approximately another 15 minutes. So I'm quite confident that we can, that as stated in here, that we can get the additional time into the timetable. I'm quite confident that I confirmed it today. So.
Is this the hotel down here?
That is the hotel.
I mean, that's going past my house.
Yes.
Well, I thought that there could have popped in for a cup of tea.
But I should mention, as you say that, the road down to the hotel is in very bad
Very
condition.
bad condition.
So that's something that needs to be discussed with the operator, and the operator of the bus, whether or not it would actually be appropriate to go down
And
there.
I used to work at the Old Park Hotel, God knows how many years ago, and it's not any better than it was then.
Oh, no.
It hasn't repaired itself.
No, it hasn't.
I've got especially large holes outside my house that I'm not going to put up.
Thanks very much, Steve, for that. I don't have any questions because I was involved in the discussions there, but any councillors
Yeah,
would like to? Yeah, Lee?
yes, Stephen, I agree with you about the booking system, and just, I was thinking about it and I thought, okay, I phone up and I say, or send a text saying, J. Lee, but then how do I get a confirmation that that's been received? And the sort of sorting, into Excel spreadsheet and stuff. I know it only takes a minute, and there is an app for it, but it all sounds a bit sort of, while this guy is driving, is he gonna do that as well?
No, well, that's what needs to be discussed with the suppliers. Previously, he was very, very amiable to it. The manager came in and had a meeting with us, and he was very amiable to do this work. It wouldn't be done by the driver. The idea would be that the messaging and the sorting and so on would be done in advance. I've had a look at some other schemes around the country, and some of them have a very, very small window. For example, you can phone or send a text message between 8 and 9 in the morning, and that's it. So theoretically, we could go down a similar.
Oh, I see. So the admin is concentrated in that hour, yeah.
Or alternatively, for example, you have it open from 6 o'clock in the evening through to 8 o'clock in the morning, and then you just scrape out the data in one go. And like I said, we did a little test where I received 20 text messages with that data, and it was literally 3 or 4 minutes. So, but that needs to be demonstrated with the supplier. It's absolutely fine for him to sit in a casual meeting and say, we'll do it. But I actually have to sit with the guy and make sure that he's willing to put his computer on at 8:30 and sit there until 8:45 to do that. So,
I mean, he's going to burn more fuel, doesn't he, than previously, because the circuits are wider.
yes, if
has
successful.
he given us a figure for that?
Yes,
It's
£5.
£5 a day.
£5 a
Quite
day.
reasonable, isn't it?
Yeah, something like that. Councillor Bond.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good piece of work, Stephen. So congratulations on putting it together. I agree with you. I think that a morning booking system probably would be better if people use that sort of GPs. Getting a GP appointment. I think if you go with another four people, you're going to cancel, the weather's not going to be nice, or you're going to have no shows. Unless there's a way you can cancel a booking, I think that you're taking a risk having it any time the day before. So if I were you, as with the GP appointment, I'd say you phone between these times.
It's a good input. I mean, it's a good offering. So it's not too much to ask that people make the organisation in the morning. It's good.
You're dropping the Esplanade one, which probably makes sense to get the figures.
Yes.
So you probably want to remove the Esplanade reference from the leaflet.
It is the draft. Yes.
And if it is, and if I don't know whether there's any demand to go to some Bond Church, because if there is, it might be worth thinking of a way you can put the Bond Church times on.
Yeah,
Just the beginning and end, maybe just at the bottom, so people want to make that journey, they can work it out. And if you need a hand delivery, then let me know, and we give you a hand.
Oh yeah, okay. Oh, you can come and bring it off. Yeah. Okay, no, it's a good input, and I'm erring towards this the idea of having it between 8 and 9 in the morning. And like you say, it will avoid people cancelling, looking out the window, deciding it's raining, and the ensuing confusion that would cause with the driver. Just to return to your point about would people receive a confirmation that it has been received, not in this model. In a more complex model with a IT system backing it up, I'm sure it's possible. And then there's the question about, would the council be willing to fund somebody, an IT consultant, to sit and think about this for half a day and come up with something which removes the human error.
But then as a user, it probably feels more reliable if you're doing it an hour in the morning rather than just breakfast the day before.
But the software is definitely there because Uber used the response method, and also the Southampton Portsmouth mainland taxis use exactly the same system. I mean, I've only used them from when I used to take Margaret's to the General in Southampton, but you phoned up or texted your taxi, and within seconds you had a confirmation back that your taxi was, and then another 30 seconds later your taxi's at the front door, sort of thing. But I know that that's for taxis, but
spent a certain amount of time, as much as I've had available, Googling and looking at the likes of these.
Yeah.
The systems that I found are quite heavyweight. I mean, I did contact one company and you know, their minimum is fleets of dozens and dozens of buses. There's amazing software available, but it's not for one bus running around the town.
Gary, sorry, although you're not town councillor.
We use a similar system in the summer, and it costs 20p a text. So it does add up with costs. If you want to send a text message, get a text message coming back, it works out price of 20 pence per text. So over.
That's an expensive hairdo.
Yeah, but it could, you know, that has a cost to your cost.
I'm sure Stephen will be looking at that. Stephen, one question for me is private recommendations to the piloting. How long do you recommend the piloting of the scheme? Do you have a time frame?
I would say the questions I would say my questions to Clark then would be how often do you receive the passenger data, the passenger number data? Really, because
we get a monthly.
Yeah.
In arrears, obviously.
Then I would say 1 year initially.
Yeah.
But hopefully you would see an immediate impact.
Right. Okay.
And hopefully, at the moment there's several dozen regular users, and if we can increase that several dozen to 5,000, 6,000, then.
And then to answer Ian's earlier point about taking out the estimated and the use for one church, a 12-month period would seem to me to be a time when people, you know, get to know about the system and then ask if they can be included, or if they can come to here, or can come X, Y, or Z, and you can make alterations along the way.
That's right. I mean, hopefully we'll get a great demand, and we can look to incorporate other parts of the town increasingly. And as you know, in the discussions we've had, there's a lot of scope for expansion, but let's try and get in the black first.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. No, once again, to echo, thanks very much indeed for the work. It's a good body of work. So from that, I take it you'd like to move the proposal?
Yes, I
have a second there. Councillor Logan, all those in favour? Thank you very much. Item number 10, casual vacancy. Clark.
There's nothing new here, just a matter of information primarily, and to inform the council that the first test on the way to having an election for the vacancy in Ventnor West has been passed. 10 electors had given notice, the Isle of Wight Council's returning officer, that they wish for an election to be held. Again, a lot of thanks to Councillors Mack and Jim Toogood for encouraging residents to sign up and deliver the results to the Isle of Wight Council. So nominations will open on 28th of February. I've not been given a date yet for when they will close, but the election, if it's contested, will be on April the 4th.
The end of the tax year. Thank you very much. War Memorial.
Yes, Mr. Member, apologies it's late, but I've given you the reason why it's late.
Yeah.
The email arrived with us on Friday, and as you will see, Historic England have had an application. They don't say from whom.
I'm just going to ask you the question.
And they don't have to. Anybody can apply, is what they tell us.
Very tired major.
To make the application. So Historic England's task, once they've had a request to add a building, or in this case a war memorial, to the list of buildings of special architectural or historic interest, is to do an inspection to their satisfaction so that they can describe the item fully, They did talk about coming to visit here, but decided not to. As you can see, they've got the information from other sources, and they are required to give the owner, and they think that the town council is the owner, but the town council doesn't have any documentation.
No, we've been down this route before.
Yes, indeed. But nevertheless, the council has been given the opportunity to comment on the description as provided. But we have to do so within 21 days if anybody wants to add anything to it.
It's already listing, I understand.
Listing, not listed. Very good, Brian. Tony, do you have
Is the further information or comments, is that to support the case, or is it further factual details?
The annex they referred to wasn't attached, so I think that's all you have.
You can either support it or
Right, okay, so you can either make the case or add a factual detail or whatever.
No, we only offer the opportunity to correct the detail.
Okay, that's where I was getting to. Right.
They may not proceed with it necessarily, but they are required to make a recommendation to the Secretary of State as to whether it should or should not be listed.
Can you just answer me one question then, Tony? You're on the committee at the Legion, aren't you?
Yes, but again, it's not a Legion.
No, but my question was going to be: have you as an organisation made an application? The answer to that is no.
I suspect
Just an individual.
there's an island-wide organisation that takes an interest in war memorials and who's on them.
Yeah.
Probably more towards the genealogy side as well.
Yeah.
And I suspect it's them.
Okay.
And I suspect they're doing it for all the memorials as well on the island.
Well, so what are we looking for here, David?
We're only looking as to whether we wish to add to or delete from, or to propose adding to or deleting from the description that you've got. That is it.
No, okay. I'm agnostic on it. I don't know enough about it, but I would say that if they've done that work, then that stands. Unless anybody else has got a differing view.
The records we have, which are limited, and the information is accurate.
Yeah. Except for the ownership.
So do we know who does own it and who's responsible for its maintenance?
No, you need to pay a lawyer up £1.5 million.
Is there a danger then by allowing someone to create a historic England record about a listed building,
well, it's
listing us as the
problem?
owner?
No, it's a statutory authority that becomes somebody else's problem. I mean, Tony and I have been involved in this for years, literally, trying to establish the ownership, and County Council don't want to know, Town Council certainly don't own it, as far as we know. The War Graves Commission don't own it, the National Memorial Arboretum don't know anything about it. Nobody seems to, there is no red line around it, it's not delineated around the park or anything like that. So it's very difficult.
The land registry record of the park goes like that round.
Goes round the water board, so nobody owns it.
Interesting. The thing about listing is it makes repairs very much more expensive. And, much level of higher scrutiny comes in terms of what you do to it. And if it's going to fall into our camp to look after it, it's a poison chalice, really, isn't it?
Yeah. I suppose you're correct, Brian, but we've been trying for years to get this situation fixed, and I mean, if anybody else knows how to do it, then carry on, but we've certainly tried, haven't we, Tony? And the park,
What advantage will there be to listing it? I mean, it's a unique thing. We look after it, the Legion looks after it. Is listing it going to add anything to it? Is going to give it any extra protection or importance or anything? Can we just say that we don't think it should be listed because we can't see any advantage to it or any of its maintainers?
You can't
It
have
might-
it.
it
Goes
might give
under
us,
there, that's all.
It might give us grant access if it's listed,
Might it?
Yeah, there is
Yeah.
that avenue
Yeah.
for listing.
Yeah.
as opposed to an ordinary structure.
Because obviously if it's listed means that they think it's, by virtue of the listing, that it's something that needs to be
Yeah.
maintained.
Yes.
What the email actually says, if I may read it, it's from the Historic England officer. If you have any further information or observations on the consultation report which you believe might be relevant to our assessment, we will be pleased to hear from you. They add that they will notify us of the Secretary of State's decision
Yeah.
in due course.
The only thing I would say, David, is that it ought to be somewhere in the body of reply that ownership is a dispute. Yeah. And they might use their good offices to take it further. Who knows? Okay, thank you very much. Which brings us swiftly to your report. Number 12.
Into this pub down there. Place next to the library is listed. That's right. So the same book. Oh, it was a huge
Yes.
Well, I'm not going to read it to you.
Item 1 on the Town Clerk's report records the action that the Isle of Wight Council officers have taken in respect of enabling the relocation of the emergency phone on the Esplanade, which has been done successfully. And they tell us they've also replaced some of the worst sections of the Esplanade fencing, having required some funding to do so. So we're grateful to both of us. It's been very painless. They've kept us informed and they've done the job. So that's really good. Item 2 is just a brief summary of the latest meeting that we had with the Ventnor Business Association officers. They were very pleased about Ventnorville, and the skating rink experiment seems to have worked, with over 1,000 users taking up the opportunity to experience it. Item 3, Alison and I, as you can see, attended the annual meeting of the Isle of Wight branch of the Society of Local Council Clerks, and in spite of the fact that it was in Porchfield, in the dark, but anyway, we managed to find it, so that was a useful evening. Working groups have been meeting as usual, and you have the dates there. And finally, I thought you'd be interested to know that I am due to meet with the current chair of IWELP, along with the clerk from Seaview, Mark Pink, on Wednesday of this week for an informal discussion at the Bargeman Rest, would you believe?
What's your approval to them?
We've been invited for coffee. There is a history to this, but I won't bother you with it.
It's strange because I'm getting more and more people asking me about our non-involvement with IWELP. Recently they seem to have.
Really?
You don't have from people like David Street from Right Hand Council. I'll come to me in a minute. Because, and not just them, but others saying that they'd like to come into discussions. And I did anticipate this by saying that you were going to be involved in meetings in any case, so I wasn't prepared to say anything. So, because everybody knows what I think of IWELP anyway, it's on the record. And it's not very glowing. Before we go, they may have a chance to improve. Let's see. Does anybody have any questions on the clerk's report?
Just to point out that given the demise of the skating rink in Ryde, there is obviously a market for such a facility.
Well, I read that 1,000. Yeah, it's incredible.
Perhaps a future project from the town council.
I could turn Flowers Brook into a huge skating rink. How about that?
They did have a surprise because they hadn't expected to have to pay VAT on it.
Oh, the dreaded HMRC. You know, they always want a pint of blood, don't they?
I have heard anecdotally people saying that they didn't think much of the skating rink and they were pretty disappointed in the experience of it compared with the normal one.
Well, it's not ice, is it?
Yeah.
It's not really nice now.
But I think the idea is really good, but it'd be nice if it was a better version somehow. But I don't know how. Yeah,
It was a very brave thing to do, though, because
Yeah,
it cost them £6,000.
Yeah, it's a big gamble.
Big gamble.
Yeah.
So they've done well.
Well, good.
Anything else? Well, thank you all very much indeed. There's no members of the public unless Gary, you got anything you want to